The repeating pattern of events is a common known occurrence in the Berserk universe. Although things are not destined to end up the same way, it's undeniable that certain events will mirror what has already happened. This is a cool little detail because it allows us to go back through the manga to look for clues that are literally hiding in plain sight. For example, Guts' recent prison sentence at the Kushan Empire was very similar to the way Griffith was locked up in the Tower of Rebirth. And the way that Griffith easily defeated Guts in their first fight at Elfhelm was remarkably similar to their first fights in the Golden Age arc. Heck, Guts even had a vision of Griffith standing on top of his sword. I mean, they pretty much hammered the point home. Luckily for Guts though, this means that if things are destined to repeat in the same form or fashion, then he'll eventually defeat Griffith, much like he did on that fateful winter morning. But what series of events led up to this battle, and what exactly was Guts' mindset heading into it? Now if you remember, this happened on the heels of the Midland Army defeating the Tudor Army in the 100 Years' War. As such, the Band of the Hawk was granted peerage and Griffith himself was raised to the rank of general. After which time, Guts, with a clear mind, decided that he could progress no further as a person if he remained under the thumb of Griffith. So in a bid to search for his own sense of purpose, he engaged in a duel with his commanding officer to earn his freedom. Now, like the early days of the Band of the Hawk, the new Band of the Hawk is roaming the land and defeating enemies left and right. It is expected that at some point, Griffith, who is the de facto leader of Falconia, will solidify himself as the ruler by getting married to Princess Charlotte. So, as you can see, like being promoted to the general in the Golden Age arc, Griffith will ascend to being a king with his marriage. He'll literally be at the highest moment of his life, just like he was at the highest moment of his life in the Golden Age arc. But this is where things are going to turn on him, or presumably turn on him. Because like he was taken from the highest moment of his life, he was soon after taken to the lowest moment of his life, the most troublesome, tragic moment of his life. Now, whether this downfall is the result of Guts' party attack in Falconia, or some unforeseen rift in the astral realm, remains to be seen. But if things are destined to mirror the past, then Griffith will rise and fall just like he did in the Golden Age arc. I mean, it also reflects the rise and fall of King Geyseric's kingdom as well, which is quite appropriate, because as Griffith has already stated, he wants to create a second empire that reaches across the entire continent. So the seeds are already in place. Geyseric's empire had a huge rise, it was the greatest kingdom on the face of the earth, and then it was destroyed. Griffith is much like Geyseric, so we would presume that something similar is going to happen to him as well. So the seeds are already there for Guts to stand toe-to-toe with Griffith once more, and presumably come out on top. However, for this to transpire, Guts will need to free himself once more. He needs to free himself from the hatred that he's been harboring for Griffith these past 4 years. Sure, Guts has made good use of his hatred to bring down many powerful apostles, but it's come at a severe cost, that being his psychological well-being. And if you remember in the Golden Age arc, prior to meeting the Band of the Hawk, he was killing a lot of mercenaries, but he was pretty miserable because of it. He didn't really have any sense of direction or purpose. And that's kind of how he was after the Golden Age arc. He lost all that purpose and just became a roaming mercenary again. Now, the Beast of Darkness for Guts represents the inner rage and turmoil that he feels on a constant basis. It's a ferocious and tough monster, but it's also destructive beyond compare. The Berserker armor is specifically designed to harness this very power, by accentuating his speed and strength. But paradoxically, he'll need to release this negative energy if he truly wants to become strong again. I said this in another video, but I believe the Apostles and the Beast of Darkness depend on the Barites for their power. The Godhand members thusly are able to manipulate said Barites to warp space and time. This is why Ganishka couldn't touch Griffith. He's a being made out of Barites, and Griffith controls the Barites. But if, say, for example, Guts were to free himself of his inner Beast of Darkness and all the Barites in his body, Griffith would have no control over him. This would set the stage for an even battle. A battle much like the one they had on the Snowy Hill in Midland. Now, given the recent events of Chapter 383, it's likely that Guts is going to go through a psychological transformation, not unlike the one that Casca experienced. If he's successful, a burden will be lifted off of him, and he'll be able to fight without rage or torment. He'll be able to fight with a clear mind. When Skull Knight lost his body to the Berserker armor, it's likely that Flora attempted to forcibly separate him from the internal Beast of Darkness. I believe that Guts will also separate from his Beast of Darkness, but he's going to do it under his own means. He'll do it in a way that will preserve his physical body, allowing him to remain within the physical realm. And this is the key to resisting the God Hand. One must resist temptation, anger, and fear. They must absolve themselves of all rights so that the God Hand has no supernatural control over them. The God Hand feeds off of this negative energy. They feed off of the pain and the torment of humans. But if they were to combat someone who has rid themselves of all these influences, their godlike powers would be reduced to nothing. Now, I know a lot of you guys are going to say this is just totally bonkers and out there, but just think about this for a moment. In a weird way, Mura sort of gave us an answer as to how to defeat Griffith with Rickard's slap. Now, most of us assume that Griffith just allowed Rickard to slap him, and that's because he harbored some guilt for what he did to the Band of the Hawk. But what if he literally couldn't stop the slap? Unlike Ganishka, who was a ball of negative energy and could easily be manipulated, Rickard is an innocent teenager who harbors no ill will. Hence the reason that Griffith couldn't use his mythical powers on him. Like, say, having his hand phase through his body, just like he did to Guts' sword. Now, of course, this is all easier said than done. Guts has a storied past with Griffith, and he harbors a ton of resentments and anger. Even if his current trial is successful, it's very possible he'll regress in the face of his mortal enemy. But I believe there's a secret weapon in all of this. This is where the Moonlight Boy is crucial. He has always been that calm, stabilizing force for Guts. Someone who can break through his psychological barriers and can temper his spirit. So if the Moonlight Boy can provide a much needed bit of assistance, it might just prove crucial for the final result. Of course, this is also another repeating pattern within the Berserk universe, because ever since the Black Swordsman arc, the Demon Child has always been providing Guts with some assistance. He's always providing him with clues and helpful advice. Although Guts didn't always see it that way, that's the way it was intended. And I believe he'll do it one more time in that final battle with Griffith. But anyway guys, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you later.